There was an opportunity for, since the American Indian hasn't been able to hear his voice heard, or have his voice heard, anywhere in the history of the United States.
Marlon Brando didn't just change acting. He detonated the old Hollywood system and rebuilt it in his own image. He was a rebel, a legend, an Oscar winner, and a man who refused to let anyone define him. But behind all the myth-making, all the headlines, all the iconic performances, Brando kept something surprisingly simple and deeply personal. A list of the films that truly mattered to him. Some were his own masterpieces, others were movies he admired as a viewer. But each one revealed a piece of who he was. An artist driven by conscience, raw truth, and emotional honesty. In this video, we're counting down the 6 films Marlon Brando named as his favorites. We'll hear what Brando himself said about these movies, why they resonated with him, and how they shaped both his craft and his life. Whether it's a performance he poured his soul into or a film that inspired him long before fame arrived, these picks give us a rare window into Brando's mind. So grab your popcorn, settle in, and let's dive into the stories, the quotes, and the hidden meaning behind Marlon Brando's 6 favorite films. Starting with number 6. Number 6, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, 1932. Marlon Brando begins his list with a film he never appeared in, yet it shaped him more deeply than many he starred in.
Jim, why haven't you come before?
I couldn't. I was afraid to.
But you could have written. It's been almost a year since you escaped.
But I haven't escaped. They're still after me. They'll always be after me. I've had jobs, but I can't keep them.
I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, 1932, featuring the extraordinary Paul Muni, is a blistering, ahead-of-its-time portrait of a man crushed by a brutal justice system. The movie follows James Allen, a war veteran wrongfully convicted and forced into the horrific world of the Southern chain gangs. It is hard, relentless, emotional filmmaking. Exactly the kind of cinema Brando respected. And it left an imprint on him that lasted his entire life. To understand why Brando valued this film, you have to understand what Paul Muni meant to him. Brando openly admitted that seeing Muni perform was the best acting I ever saw in my life. Imagine that. The man considered the best actor of the century saying someone else was better. But Brando wasn't insecure about it. He admired Muni's total commitment. Muni didn't play characters. He transformed. He vanished into them. And that transformation, that sense of danger and unpredictability, became a model for how Brando approached acting. Chain Gang showcased everything Brando loved: authenticity, moral purpose, and a character relentlessly fighting a system stacked against him. Brando gravitated towards stories that confronted injustice. This film wasn't polite. It wasn't sanitized. It forced audiences to witness cruelty that most people prefer to ignore.
Alan, we've just had a final report on your new hearing.
Well,
They've suspended decision.
And that honesty resonated with Brando, who believed art had a responsibility to challenge people, not comfort them. Chain Gang did exactly that. It even influenced prison reforms, something Brando deeply respected because it proved cinema could spark change in the real world. Brando also admired how Muni played James Allen, not as a heroic figure, but as an ordinary man who gradually breaks under pressure. That vulnerability, the slow erosion of hope, fascinated Brando. He built his own performances on that same foundation of emotional truth. You can trace the DNA of Chain Gang directly into Brando's work. The trembling sincerity of On the Waterfront, the primal frustration of A Streetcar Named Desire, the haunted authority of The Godfather. These aren't coincidences. These are artistic echoes. Including Chain Gang in his list wasn't Brando trying to appear cultured. It was Brando acknowledging the film that lit the fire inside him. He admired actors who risked everything emotionally, and Paul Muni did that long before Brando ever stepped in front of a camera. This movie wasn't just one of Brando's favorites. It was part of his foundation. It influenced his belief that acting should feel raw, dangerous, alive. It validated his instinct that cinema could expose injustice and awaken empathy. For Brando, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang represented where he came from artistically. the spark that helped ignite one of the greatest acting revolutions in film history. Have you seen I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang? Does Paul Muni's performance still feel powerful to you today? And can you see the connection between his intensity and Brando's later work? Number 5. Mutiny on the Bounty, 1962. For most actors, a troubled production becomes a memory they'd rather forget. But for Marlon Brando, Mutiny on the Bounty wasn't just another Hollywood epic. It was the film that changed the entire trajectory of his life. Released in 1962, the movie cast Brando as Fletcher Christian, the elegant British officer who ultimately defies Captain Bligh and leads the mutiny that became legend. The production was infamous for delays, ballooning costs, and Brando's clashes with directors. But the final film showcased Brando's charm, humor, and rebellious streak. Yet the real importance of this movie lies far beyond the screen. While filming in French Polynesia, Brando discovered something that transformed him: Tahiti. The islands captivated him instantly. The people, the culture, the rhythm of life. And nothing struck him more than the beauty of the atoll Tetiaroa, a place he later purchased and described with almost spiritual awe. In his autobiography, Brando wrote, "The lagoon was infused with more shades of blue than I thought possible. It was magical." That wasn't a line crafted for publicity. It was Brando being genuinely smitten. Tahiti became his refuge, his home, and eventually part of his legacy. Brando's attachment to Mutiny on the Bounty also came through his personal relationships. During production, he met Tarita Terriapaya, the Tahitian actress who played his on-screen love interest. They fell in love off-screen as well and eventually married. They had children together, tying Brando permanently to the islands. Without this film, Brando's family, home, and later life would have been entirely different. Few films reshape a personal destiny so dramatically. Even though the movie earned mixed reviews and contributed to Brando's reputation as difficult, he didn't dwell on that. What stayed with him was the meaning he found. He embraced Tahitian values: community, nature, simplicity, and often contrasted them sharply with Hollywood's artificiality. When he bought Tetiaroa, he dreamed of turning it into a cultural and environmental sanctuary, long before sustainability became a global conversation.
Wag umainiti.
Fletcher Christian is my name.
Is my name.
No. Fletcher.
Mutiny on the Bounty didn't just entertain Brando, it awakened something inside him that no other film had. Artistically, Brando also took risks. His interpretation of Fletcher Christian was quirky, thoughtful, and intentionally unconventional. He wanted the character to feel human rather than heroic. Despite the chaos behind the scenes, Brando poured creativity into shaping Christian's personality, an approach that later critics came to appreciate. For Brando, the film was valuable not because it pleased critics, but because it allowed him to experiment, discover, and grow. In the end, Mutiny on the Bounty became one of Brando's favorites because it intersected with his heart. It led him to love, family, culture, and a lifelong sanctuary. It became more than a movie. It became the gateway to his true second life. If you had a film experience that could change your entire world, what would you hope it brings you? Adventure, love, or maybe even a new home? And if you've seen Brando's Fletcher Christian, how does his performance compare to other versions of this legendary story? Number 4. Burn, 1969. At number 4 on Brando's list is a film many casual viewers have never seen.
Well, where are they now?
I don't know. I don't know anymore.
But you did steal them, didn't you?
See.
It is true, isn't it?
Yes.
Yet Burn, also known as Que Mata, was one of the projects Marlon Brando cherished most. Released in 1969 and directed by Gillo Pontecorvo, the political drama cast Brando as Sir William Walker, a cunning British operative sent to manipulate a slave uprising on a fictional Caribbean island. Though the film wasn't a mainstream hit, it carried enormous weight for Brando personally. It challenged him intellectually, aligned with his moral convictions, and demanded one of the most controlled, layered performances of his career. Brando himself said so. In a candid interview years later, he remarked, "I have tried hard in a movie called Burn. It was a movie about slavery and a slave rebellion." That short statement reveals volumes. Brando didn't brag often. He rarely praised his own work. But when he mentioned Burn, there was pride in his voice. He believed the film contained some of his finest acting, and dedicated fans and film scholars often agree. Why? Because Burn allowed Brando to do what he valued most in cinema: merge art with political meaning. The story cuts into the heart of colonial exploitation. Walker's mission is to ignite a rebellion he can later control, using freedom as a bargaining chip. The role required Brando to play a man who appears charming and rational while operating with cold calculations under the surface. Achieving that duality fascinated Brando. He pushed Pontecorvo for deeper character nuance, refusing to portray Walker as a simple villain. Brando insisted on making him morally ambiguous, someone who believes he's doing the right thing even when he's perpetuating injustice. That complexity mattered to Brando, who always fought to portray human beings, not caricatures. Behind the scenes, the shoot was grueling. Filming in Colombia under difficult conditions strained the cast and crew. Brando argued with Pontecorvo over creative choices, yet that friction sharpened the performance. Despite the battles, Brando called Pontecorvo one of the best directors he had ever worked with. Their mutual respect created an astonishing final product, a film that feels provocative, urgent, and emotionally demanding even today. Brando valued Burn because it reflected his worldview. He believed cinema should illuminate injustice, not hide it. Throughout his life, he supported civil rights movements, indigenous rights, and anti-colonial activism. Burn's themes echoed those passions. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't commercial, and it didn't rescue his box office reputation, but it fed his soul. For Brando, that mattered more than studio approval or financial success. When Brando later looked back on his career, he repeatedly named Burn as one of the films he cared about the most. It represented integrity, risk, and purpose, the pillars of what he believed acting should be. Have you ever watched a film that challenged your beliefs or forced you to rethink something important? If you've seen Burn, did Brando's performance surprise you? And if you haven't, does knowing it was one of his proudest achievements make you curious to finally check it out? Number 3, The Godfather, 1972. At number 3 is the film most people instantly associate with Marlon Brando, The Godfather. Released in 1972 and directed by Francis Ford Coppola, this crime saga is widely considered one of the greatest films ever made. Brando's portrayal of Don Vito Corleone became iconic. The raspy voice, the heavy eyelids, the quiet menace, the oddly gentle moments with a cat in his lap. Yet what many people forget is that Brando wasn't the studio's first choice. At the time, he was labeled washed up, unpredictable, and box office poison. But once he stepped into the room for his screen test, everything changed. And cinema history was rewritten. Brando didn't initially chase the role, but once he understood Coppola's vision, he committed fully. He transformed his face using cotton in his cheeks, slicked back his hair, reshaped his posture, and slowed his movements to create the aging patriarch. He loved approaching a character from the inside out, and Don Vito allowed him to do exactly that. Brando admired that this story wasn't simply about crime. It was about family, loyalty, and the quiet tragedy of power. He often referenced Mario Puzo's observation that The Godfather was an ironical comment on American society, a theme Brando found irresistible. Although Brando rarely spoke in depth about his own performances, he respected The Godfather for its craftsmanship. Puzo and Coppola created a world where violence had meaning and where characters felt rooted in real struggle. Brando valued material that wasn't superficial, and this film offered him rich emotional terrain. Even small moments like Don Vito tending to his garden or lamenting his fading influence allowed Brando to fold vulnerability into a character the audience initially fears. And then there was the cultural impact. Brando realized quickly that The Godfather was something special. When he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, he made headlines around the world by refusing it, sending Sachin Littlefeather in his place to protest Hollywood's portrayal of Native Americans. That decision was classic Brando. Bold, controversial, and deeply tied to his belief that movies should have moral weight. To Brando, acting and activism were intertwined. The Godfather gave him a powerful platform, and he used it. The film also resurrected his career. Before 1972, many believed Brando's best years were behind him. After The Godfather, no one doubted his brilliance again. It became a cornerstone of his legacy, a performance so influential it reshaped how audiences imagine mafia leaders. And yet Brando always insisted that his goal wasn't to glorify violence, but to reveal the humanity buried inside a man corrupted by power. What do you think makes Brando's Don Corleone so unforgettable? Is it the voice, the philosophy, the quiet strength, or something deeper? And do you agree that The Godfather might be the greatest comeback performance in Hollywood history? Number 2. A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951. At number 2 is the film that detonated Marlon Brando into superstardom, A Streetcar Named Desire. Released in 1951 and directed by Elia Kazan, the film adapts Tennessee Williams' scorching play about desire, delusion, and broken lives.
Sally, tell us a joke. Tell us a funny little story to make us all laugh. I don't know what's the matter, we're all so solemn. Is it because I've been stood up on my ball? It's the first time in my entire experience with men, and I've had a good deal of all sorts, that I've actually been stood up by anyone. I don't know how to take it.
Brando plays Stanley Kowalski, a blue-collar force of nature whose clashes with Blanche DuBois, Vivian Leigh, create some of the tensest, most electrifying scenes in cinema history. Before Streetcar, movie acting was polished, theatrical, and measured. After Streetcar, everything changed. Brando brought a new kind of truth, a raw psychological realism that felt dangerous and alive. What made Brando proud of this film wasn't the fame it brought, but the honesty he poured into Stanley. He refused to treat Stanley as a one-note brute. As he explained years later, I had to understand and respect Stanley. I knew men like Stanley, simple, hardworking men who have been set out to walk on a short, hot, bumpy road. All Stanley wants is his own home, some respect, and dinner and bed at the same time every night. What sounds like a simple statement is actually Brando explaining his entire philosophy. To play a character truthfully, you must see the world through their eyes. Brando valued Streetcar because it demanded emotional excavation. Stanley is aggressive, jealous, territorial. Yet Brando insisted there was pain, insecurity, even tenderness beneath that rage. He found those hidden layers. Watch his physicality, the hunched shoulders, the restless hands, the animal tension. None of it is artificial. It is lived in, instinctive. Brando was channeling real men he had grown up around, and that empathy is what makes Stanley compelling, even when he is morally reprehensible. Brando forced audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about masculinity, vulnerability, and power. The production itself was charged with intensity. Brando had already played Stanley on Broadway, so he came into the film fully immersed. Vivian Leigh had never worked with such rawness before, and the contrast between her theatrical precision and Brando's naturalistic style created on-screen electricity. Their scenes feel unpredictable because Brando was unpredictable, in the best way. Even tiny gestures, like Brando rubbing his face with Blanche's dropped glove, were spontaneous. Kazan encouraged this freedom, and Brando thrived under it. Streetcar also marked Brando's arrival as a cultural force. Audiences were stunned. Critics said he didn't just act, he exploded. Suddenly, Brando became the face of method acting, the model for a generation of performers including James Dean, Paul Newman, Montgomery Clift, and countless others. But despite the global adoration, Brando didn't cling to the image of Stanley as a symbol of virile rebellion. What mattered to him was the work, the deep emotional honesty he achieved in the role.
No, I don't think Mr. Kowalski will be amused.
When you watch Brando as Stanley, do you feel more shock, sympathy, or fascination? And which scene hits you hardest? The poker night, the staircase confrontation, or the iconic Stella moment? I'd love to hear your interpretation of this groundbreaking performance. Number 1. On the Waterfront, 1954. Topping Marlon Brando's list is On the Waterfront, the 1954 masterpiece that earned him his first Academy Award and reshaped modern acting. Directed by Elia Kazan, the film follows Terry Malloy, a former boxer trapped in a corrupt dock workers union run by violent mobsters.
Yeah, Mac?
Yeah.
2 Glockenheimers and 2 Purchases.
Yeah. See the fight last night?
No.
Kid named Riley, both hands.
Like you used to be.
Terry's journey from reluctant bystander to reluctant hero remains one of cinema's most powerful transformations. It's gritty, emotional, morally charged, and Brando considered it one of the defining achievements of his life. Why did Brando value this film so deeply? Because it aligned perfectly with his belief that acting should have purpose. Throughout his life, Brando insisted he wanted his work to be to the betterment of the audience and our understanding. On the Waterfront offered exactly that opportunity. It wasn't just entertainment. It was a story exposing systemic abuse, fear, and the cost of silence. Brando connected intensely with Terry Malloy, a man beaten down by life but still capable of awakening his conscience. That struggle for dignity, for the courage to speak out, resonated with Brando's own disdain for cruelty and injustice. Brando's performance in this film was a revolution. Terry Malloy wasn't glamorous, he wasn't eloquent. He was wounded, hesitant, and tender. Brando filled him with emotional truth. Look at the small details. The way Terry toys with a glove Edie drops, the softness of his voice when he says he could have been a contender, the trembling sincerity when he confronts his brother in the taxi. That iconic taxi scene wasn't just brilliant writing.
How much you weigh, sir? You weighed 168 pounds. You were beautiful.
It was Brando channeling real heartbreak. He improvised physical gestures, he infused raw vulnerability, and he delivered a moment considered by many the greatest acting ever captured on film. Brando valued On the Waterfront not just for its message, but for its craftsmanship. Working with Kazan again pushed Brando to emotionally dangerous places. Kazan demanded truth in every moment, and Brando rose to meet it with astonishing authenticity. Their collaboration marked the peak of the method acting movement, and Brando's work became a blueprint for generations of actors. Terry Malloy is the character directors still reference when they ask actors to make it real. The film also represented a turning point in Brando's career. It proved he wasn't just the explosive young star of A Streetcar Named Desire. He was a dramatic force capable of enormous depth and quiet intensity. On the Waterfront gave him international respect, awards, and the freedom to choose more meaningful projects. And for Brando, that mattered. He wanted acting to be more than fame. He wanted it to illuminate the human condition. On the Waterfront did exactly that. It let him show the world what acting could be. Vulnerable, courageous, transformative. Do you think Terry Malloy is Brando's greatest performance? And what moment from On the Waterfront hits you hardest? The taxi confession, the rooftop tenderness, or Terry's final walk toward justice? I'd love to hear which scene stays with you the most. And there you have it, the 6 films Marlon Brando held closest to his heart. Each title reveals something different about who he was, not just as an actor, but as a thinker, a rebel, and a man searching for meaning. From the moral battles of On the Waterfront, to the explosive realism of A Streetcar Named Desire, to the cultural earthquake of The Godfather, Brando's favorite films reflected his belief that acting should speak truth, challenge injustice, and leave audiences changed. Even the lesser-known works like Burn or his admiration for I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang show how deeply he valued authenticity over glamour. And Mutiny on the Bounty reminds us that sometimes a film's greatest impact isn't artistic at all. It's personal, shaping the rest of a life. Now the conversation comes to you. Which of Brando's picks surprised you? Do you agree with his choices, or would you add another performance from his remarkable career? And what's your favorite Brando moment? A line, a scene, a look that stayed with you long after the credits rolled? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into a legend's personal list, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more cinematic storytelling.